preview of the 2020-2021 season. And we have such a wonderful lineup to introduce this season. And one of the things that we're going to begin next year, and we've been planning this for quite a while, is to have a partner in crime, a partner in music, with me and the Las Vegas Philharmonic staff and musicians. And this is called an artist in residence. And we are so lucky to have in Joshua Roman the perfect person to do this new initiative with us, and to help us introduce the season and to give a little idea of who Joshua is and what he's all about. He's going to co-host this event with me, and so let's bring on Joshua Roman.
Hi, thank you, Maestro. Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here.
So, Joshua, let's talk a little bit about what it means to be an artist in residence. What are it's still sort of a work in progress about how we're going to incorporate this idea with the Philharmonic. But share with us your ideas of what it means to join a community of musicians like the Las Vegas Philharmonic for the first time.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's actually one of the things that I've loved about this process is that we've really dug into that question itself, rather than just saying, I'll come by a couple of times and play more than one concert, really looking at what that means. So I want to know Las Vegas. I want to know the people of Las Vegas, the music of Las Vegas. I want to feel a connection. I really want to build something that by the time I am to leave a residency, that feels like a structural change in relationship dynamics, both with me as an outsider, but also anything that I can do to encourage the kind of creative connections that already exist, but from another perspective. I think my job as an artist in residence is not just to come in and play music that I bring, but to listen, to explore, and to help be a connector. So I'm looking forward to that a lot.
And so in that regard, how does that fit in with what we already do? We do 10 concerts a year on a beautiful stage at the Smith Center. Is it something different than that, perhaps? Is it added to? How does it add to that mix?
Right. Well, when I look at an orchestra, I see a group of musicians. And obviously, as a soloist, I am predisposed to love playing the solo part with that group of musicians as an orchestra, and you leading them, and us together all doing that. But I also see a string quartet. I see potential for a new music ensemble. I see musicians who have creative impulses that may not fit on the Smith Center stage. And Las Vegas is a city with lots of stuff going on. A lot of people may not realize how much goes on in Las Vegas outside of the Strip, but it's a big city with lots of creativity, lots of energy. And so tapping into that and essentially looking at what's already there and how we can showcase different aspects of it. So not just the 10 concerts on stage at the Smith Center, but looking at what homes and venues can we go into, what people can we pull out of the music scene or the Philharmonic that have something that you wouldn't necessarily notice if it's in the orchestra, but can be a very special and unique experience in another instance.
Well, I think that sort of leads us into how we, at least for the beginning of the season, how we decided to shape the initial concert experience. How the season unfolds from the very beginning has this concept in mind with you involved. And it just so happens that it celebrates not one, but two birthdays. And it's, of course, the 250th anniversary of Beethoven's birth, but it's also
my birthday.
It's all your birthday.
Yeah.
And so we begin with in October 16th through 18th. celebrating Beethoven's 250th birthday, and of course Joshua's undisclosed birthday year, with 3 concerts, one following the next. October 16th, we begin with this fantastic Egmont Overture, followed by the Symphony Number 8, and joining us now to be a part of this conversation is the violinist for these concerts, or for 2 of these concerts at least, Bella Hristova. Hello, Bella.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
And I may at first I should say that Joshua's joining us from what I remember, Santa Barbara. Yeah.
Yes.
And Bella, where are you joining us from?
I'm at home in Philadelphia.
Welcome, Bella. You know, we have been playing sort of musical tag for years and years and years without having officially working together, and so it's so exciting to have you here to talk about these concerts. I know that you've played with the Las Vegas Philharmonic. I think
yes.
The year before I began as music director.
Okay, it was with Ray Hotoda. He conducted, and it was the Bruch First Violin Concerto.
Wonderful. And was this your first time to Las Vegas, or was this part of your other visits that we don't have to talk about?
No, it was actually, I don't know which time to Las Vegas. It's one of my favorite cities to visit, and my husband and I come to Las Vegas maybe yearly, just for a few days. Nice. We love it there. We usually spend a day to go to a state park, a national park. Last we saw the Valley of Fire, which was gorgeous. We've gone to Death Valley. Then we eat a lot. We always see Cirque du Soleil, so it's a very happy city for me to visit.
You know, that's, I think, and Josh mentioned that briefly, there's so much more to Las Vegas than what people imagine there to be. And once you venture past the Strip, which is fun, of course, and discover all of these, the state parks, Valley of Fire, Red Rock, et cetera, and the amazing culinary scene that is in Las Vegas, you really realize it's a very, very special place to visit and to be. So let's talk a little bit about this very interesting piece by Beethoven that you'll be performing with Joshua on the first concert on Friday, October 16th, which is his concerto for piano, violin, and cello. It's the triple concerto. And of course, when it was premiered, Beethoven was the pianist. But it poses unique challenges to both the cellist and the violinist. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, Joshua and Bella.
Yes, well, it's going to be, I think, a really beautiful experience. The piece is huge and very positive. It's one of the most uplifting ensemble pieces out there, I think, for orchestra and ensemble. And I'm really excited, Bella, for us to be on stage again.
I'm so excited too.
Yeah,
so
and
you've performed it together before.
Well, we haven't played this together, but we've played piano trios together.
The Schubert, yes. E flat, and also the Ravel duo. I remember that was great fun.
And we also did some arrangements of things, so it was This will be a beautiful way to reconnect musically. It's funny. Beethoven did give himself the piano part. He made that the least involved part. He gave himself a break.
It's a challenge for the cellist, right? It's one of those things that you don't really recognize if you're a listener, realizing how difficult it is for the cello.
It is. It's interesting. I mean, I think it's just deceptive because it's. I would not say that it's more difficult than another cello concerto, but you would think, given the roles that the piano and the violin usually have, you would think that it would be easier, and it's not. It's every bit as challenging as a typical cello concerto, and the violinist and the pianist and I have to trade off things that really sound like they were thought of for the other two instruments, and I've got to somehow throw my arm as far away from my face as possible and keep up. It's a lot of work. But it's beautiful and warm, though.
I also think the violin part's so interesting for that.
It is interesting, and I want to say it's also really hard. I've been practicing it these last couple of months, and it's in C major. I love what you said, Josh, that it's such an optimistic and positive piece. It is. It really puts a smile on your face when you listen to it or play it. And there, arpeggios and scales, but they're really hard. I love the sonorities that he can get by using the three instruments, but especially the violin and cello playing together, you can go from really high in register to really low, and he sort of crisscrosses these musical ideas.
That's very true. Well, we look forward to hearing that concert. Of course, on Saturday there's another concert right after that, which includes the Symphony Number 1 and the violin, both of the violin romances, and his Symphony Number 5 that we all love and know dearly. And then on Sunday we do a chamber performance. Where again, this is part of this to be determined exposure of you as the artist in residence to our community. But I do think that we will probably have the Archduke Piano Trio as one of the pieces on this program. Maybe talk a little bit about the Archduke.
Well, it's absolutely one of the big pieces in the repertoire. It's another very powerful piece. I mean, there's no holding back in that one at all. I think it's going to be interesting to be playing two pieces by the same composer that have such different setups, but with the same players. Usually if you're going to switch, if you're in a string quartet, you would play different string quartets, or a piano trio, you'd play different piano trios. But to be able to work in a concerto scenario and then in a chamber music scenario with the same two main collaborators, and also have this totally different array of forces, I think it's going to be very fascinating. So hopefully that comes across. It's also a wonderful chance for us to explore and introduce that artist in residence relationship, which we'll have plenty of time to work on, but that'll be the major introduction. So I'm grateful to have Bella and David along to really make that super powerful. Don't have to do it alone.
Yes, I should mention that David Fung will be the pianist for both the triple concerto and for this chamber music concert. Bella, before we say goodbye, anything you'd like to add about this piano trio concert? It might be more or less than a piano trio.
Yes, I can't wait. Well, I love that. Actually, they're both dedicated to the Archduke Rudolph, both the triple concerto and the Archduke Trio, which is so lush and different, and it's some 30 opus numbers later, but it's a very different piece in character and very warm and lush, as I said. So I also look forward to exploring both trios, one with orchestra, one just by ourselves with the same players. I've never played either piece, and Beethoven's my favorite composer, and I want to play all the music that I can play of his. And I can't play piano or any other instrument, so
now's the year. Now's your excuse.
Yes.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you, Bella, so much for joining us. We can't wait to see you in October.
Thanks for having me.
Stay healthy.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Wonderful. Okay, we move on to a really unique concert that we're so proud to be presenting in November 14th, the American Woman concert. It's really it's a bold but long overdue statement that we're making with this concert. And in some ways, some folks may consider this that we're making up for lost time, but in that's not how I look at it. I look at it as a concert of great composers, some of whom are living, some of whom are not, and we are celebrating many aspects of this. It's the 100th anniversary, of course, of the signing of the 19th Amendment, and so we are just going to explore and celebrate this world that really has been a part of the American landscape, and we are now just acknowledging that fact and celebrating that, and to help us talk about and introduce these pieces, we have our concertmaster of the Las Vegas Philharmonic, Deanne Letourneau. Deanne, are you there? Hi, Deanne. And as one of our other soloists, the trumpeter, the fantastic trumpet player, Mary Elizabeth Bowden. Mary, are you there? Hi.
Yes. Hello.
Welcome, Mary.
Hi. So where are you joining us from, Mary?
I am in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, with my husband, David Dash, who is also a trumpeter who you know.
I do indeed. We've known each other since we were in school together at Manhattan School of Music for some reason. So give him my best. So this concert was such a joy to put together, and just because there's so much wonderful music to choose from, mostly, but also because we just haven't done a lot of this music in the past. So it's going to be a great way of exploration for our audience and for our orchestra. We begin with this fantastic piece by Joan Tower called The Fanfare for the Uncommon Woman, which is a wonderful play on the famous Copland brass fanfare for the common man, followed by Peggy Stewart Coolidge's Pioneer Dances. And then Deanne, we play the piece that we're so excited to hear you play, which is the Violin Concerto No. 2. Can we talk a little bit about this piece? I know that you've started to explore it now and learn a little bit about her, about Florence Price, and these 2 concertos that she wrote.
Yes, I'm so excited to bring this to Las Vegas. It's a really interesting study. You know, I knew nothing about Florence Price before this. I knew nothing about her music, and in researching who she was and putting together, you know, her life and where she lived, you can hear all of those elements in this concerto. It kind of reminds me of kind of American in Paris, a little bit. It's very I don't know. She grew up in the deep South, so it's like you can feel that deep South. You can almost smell the cooking that's going on in there. It's great. It's you know, music and food, but it's really beautiful, and especially coming in that time period, you know, it's going to bring something interesting to the stage. I think that most of the violin solos out there don't have. You know, orchestral music has it. You know, American in Paris has it. You know, we've got lots of Gershwin that has it. But to really have a violin concerto that has it, I think Korngold is probably our closest family member in that era.
It's so interesting that you thought of the Korngold. I remember you saying that recently, that the Korngold has a very similar sound. And for those of you who haven't heard the Korngold Violin Concerto or don't know Korngold, he was one of the great Austrian composers who had to leave Vienna because of his Jewish heritage and religion, and ended up in Hollywood and what became one of the most successful Hollywood composers, soundtrack composers. Robin Hood, we know him, of course, to see all those great Errol Flynn movies. Korngold wrote the soundtracks for. Thank you, Deanne, for that great. I'm so excited that we're doing this together. After the Violin Concerto by Florence Price, we play a wonderful overture by Jennifer Cho called Loco, and it was one of the last pieces I chose for this concert, not because I wasn't unsure, because I wasn't aware of the piece. And in looking at Jennifer, I had met Jennifer last summer watching a production of her opera, The Cold Mountain, at the Music Academy of West, and it sort of reminded me that she had so many wonderful pieces aside from the Blue Cathedral, which is what most orchestras perform. And so in discovering this wonderful overture-like piece called Loco, it's a great introduction to her music. After which we will be performing, Mary, this wonderful concerto by Ellen Taft-Zwillig, the American Concerto. Have you performed this piece before?
I have not. This is a brand new piece for me, and when it was mentioned, I listened to Philip Smith's recording right away, and it's an amazing piece. I know one of her other works, the smaller concerto for 5 players, and of course I said yes to the challenge. It was written for Doc Severinsen in the 90s, so it definitely showcases a different elements of the classical trumpet. It shows a lot more of the jazz style. It was written for the B-flat trumpet, so she could really show the robust sound of the trumpet, but it's really showcasing the American style of trumpet playing.
That's fantastic. Tell me, being a trumpet soloist in today's world is such a unique gift to all of us. What was it like sort of deciding to go into that world of becoming a trumpet soloist rather than, there's the typical route of like taking an orchestra audition and becoming part of an orchestra? That's such a wonderfully brave move.
it's a very different world, and I feel like I have a little bit of a different story than most soloists in general. I made the change in my career when I was 28 years old, and so I already had this very full orchestral life as the orchestral trumpet player, which I'm really grateful for because I know all of the repertoire, and I feel like it makes me a better soloist now. And now I've been doing this for about 10 years, and I've really enjoyed switching roles to become a soloist. And I also feel like starting a little bit later, I'm a stronger player, and it's just been really fun to learn more repertoire and to always have a challenge and to be able to show the different sides of the trumpet, that it's, it has so many different colors, sound colors, and I just really enjoy sharing that with audiences.
Well, we're really excited to be having you join us with the Las Vegas Philharmonic to introduce us to this wonderful, wonderful concerto. Thank you so much for joining us, Mary. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We end the concert with another piece by Joan Tower. It's wonderful. We're sort of bookending this concert, Josh, with music by Joan Tower. We end the concert with her Made in America. Do you know her music?
I do. Yes, it's really fantastic that this program is happening, and I can't imagine more powerful set of statements with this music. It's really, really going to be cool. I think Donato might be on mute.
I think he might be on mute. I can't hear
it says
him.
there is the mute symbol.
Hi,
there
I'm back.
Oh, there you are.
There we go.
I was like, I thought it was my thing again.
I just want to take, we're all of us these days are having to adjust so much with only interacting with each other through technology. And so thank you to everyone who's watching for your patience as we work on. I know there's a little clicking sound we've been hearing too, and we're trying to figure out what that is.
That's what I was experimenting with right now, and I think it actually was me. So I apologize for that clicking.
I don't know. I still hear it.
I still hear it.
Let me try one more thing.
There's been so much learning over the last month.
How about now? Is that maybe that will no? It's still there. Oh well, we tried.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on and do our best. Okay, yes. So in December, on December 4th, we now move on to the. We're so excited about bringing back the Messiah, but the last two times I performed it, I've only done part one, which of course focuses on Jesus's birth. That's part of the story. But of course, there are two other parts. The Messiah, of course, is a much longer piece. It describes the entire life of Jesus. And if you were to perform it in its entirety, it would be about 3.5 hours long. Joshua, have you ever done a performance of the Messiah in its entirety?
Oh, in its entirety? Maybe. I'm not sure. So it's usually broken up into two parts. Is that right? There's like the...
Three parts.
Three. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Right. So I may have done it all. My dad actually is also a conductor who has mostly conducted choral music in churches. He was the music minister at a church when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. And so I actually played the Messiah productions that he would do when I was, 8, 10, 12, whatever. And I may have played the whole thing, but I'm not sure that we did it all at once. So... big piece.
It's a
amazing piece.
It is a big piece.
Amazing.
It is an amazing piece. And of course, it is a piece that when it was originally premiered, it was intended to be performed during Easter time. But it has sort of moved over to the holiday season. Lucky for us, because I just love performing it as often as I can. To talk a little bit about this piece, we have from UNLV, we have the Professor Jonathan Rhodes-Lee, Dr. Jonathan Rhodes-Lee. He's harpsichordist extraordinaire, and we're so thankful that you are here. Are you on? There you are. Hi.
Yeah, hello, Maestro. Thank you for having me on.
So, Jonathan, from your perspective as someone who plays continuo, meaning the one of the instruments. And of course, cello is the other important instrument of the continual family, and some other instruments occasionally join in with that, depending on how adventurous a conductor or ensemble is. What is your perspective in terms of playing a piece like the Messiah?
Well, I think one of Handel's greatest strengths, in fact, is his amazing command over language, whether he's writing in Italian or for English oratorio. And I think that maybe is one of the reasons that Handel's Messiah has such powerful staying ability, in that Handel, you can understand every word that he sets, particularly in the recitatives. And
isn't that fascinating? Because he was not a native English speaker.
Not at all. And many of his contemporaries made fun of his English, and they write out his kind of pidgin English when they talk about how he speaks. But clearly, intellectually, he understood English, and he understood music, and he understood how to put them together. And so as a keyboard player, those recitatives are among the most magical things to play, the most magical music to perform.
And, that's always the case in not only the music of Handel, but the Mozart operas, where really the core of the story that's being told, the dramatic element of the story that's being told, happens in the recitative.
Absolutely. And Messiah, of course, also has the wonderful trait that the recitatives are all really short. So you get through them quick and get to the good bits, but the shortness of them is also a piece of brilliance, I think.
What's it like for the two of you working together for the first time? Josh, you meeting a harpsichordist for the first time, and Jonathan, you meeting a cello, because you have to work so well together right away.
It's true. You really do have to learn to breathe, essentially breathe together very quickly. And, the most important thing is the listening aspect. But then also it's very helpful if someone understands different sort of personal styles of playing, so that you can adapt and meet somewhere in the middle, and it's a little bit of self-awareness, I guess you could say. When you play with somebody who has self-awareness and knows that they have tendencies and can adjust those, then you're able to really click. And it can be so beautiful and powerful when you start to move together in tandem, essentially holding up the singers or the rest of the orchestra as the piece moves along.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, Donato, you forgot the third person in that partnership, which is the singer. And so the great pleasure is working with a singer who really understands the style, who really understands how to communicate like an actor. Like many of Handel's original performers in Messiah were not only singers, but were stage actors, like the famous actress Susanna Kibber or Khyber. People pronounce her name differently. But she was a very famous stage actor who premiered arias like He Was Despised, was one of the pieces written for her. So when you have a singer who's a good actor and a good declaimer, I think that the cellist and the harpsichordist can hang the music on the singer rather than trying to drive the music too much.
That's really a fascinating part of the story, because we now, you think of a great actor singer and you think of Broadway, you think of those great people on stage on Broadway who can sing and act and deliver a phrase with so much, and to think that those original singers during Handel's time were probably very similar to that in terms of their persona.
Absolutely, at least three of them in the Dublin and original London premieres were superstars. I mean, they were kind of more the equivalent of Hollywood stars. John Beard, Kitty Clive, and Susanna Kibber all were really, really famous stage actors, and a large part of the draw for the event.
Wow, that's cool. Really, really cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Jonathan. And thank you we have to move on to our next concert, but it was wonderful information. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Now, joining us is just one of my favorite people anywhere, and someone who we've collaborated on one of the shows I'm most proud of, Very Vegas Showcase. Keith Thompson. Hi, Keith.
Hey, Donato. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yo, we can hear you totally fine. I know you've been having some audio stuff backstage, as they say, but we're good to go.
Good.
So, Keith, this is the second reiteration, second iteration, I should say, of our collaboration between the Composer Showcase,
Yes.
which happens once a month at the Myron's Cabaret and with the Las Vegas Philharmonic. And let's maybe talk a little bit about what the Composer Showcase is, and for those people in Las Vegas that sadly have not been yet, that need to be there.
Absolutely. Well, the Composer Showcase is it's a show that we put together, but it's basically we showcase and give a platform to local writers, composers, lyricists, songwriters. We started out with more of a Broadway kind of a stint, but we have really broadened out to just about every style that you can think of. We've even had rap, my goodness, but classical, jazz, swing, country, big band, all kinds of things that we get to showcase because there's so many diverse writers here in Las Vegas. And it's one of my favorite things in the world because every single piece is original and written by somebody right here who's in the room. So
Josh, this is one of the first things I'm taking you to, because it was one of the first things that actually Deanne, she said she took me to see your show. I think it was during my first season during my first. And whenever I could make it, I'm there because it is really one of the most inspiring things I've ever seen. And because of the concerts that I went to, we don't have to tell the whole story, but I thought it would just be a natural fit to have that experience on the stage with an orchestra, that really local flavor of songs that no one had heard until they walk out on the stage with the orchestra, or maybe they've heard it once before at the Composer Showcase. And it was such a warm, inspiring evening when we did it in the fall. Just a few months ago. And so we're bringing this back, but the holiday version.
Well, and that's really cool because one of the highlights of every year of the Composer Showcase is that holiday showcase where the writers get to try out their best holiday material, and a lot of it's really funny. Some of it's really beautiful and warm, but it's and it's brand new, So. And I know that it's probably one of your most popular concerts as well. So I think marrying the two this year will be a really interesting idea. And, maybe some new holiday classics will emerge. That's what we're hoping for.
And this really fits in so well to why we brought Josh on as our artist in residence, because he also loves to introduce new music that he's commissioned, and sort of a very homegrown, immediate way, right, Josh?
That's right. I was just thinking, one of the things that I love about this is how it's in the middle of a season that has local players, people from international places. You've also got music that was written long ago, that was written in English, that was written by people that didn't speak English. You've got such a swath of historical and sort of geographical culture happening through the orchestra, but then to have this dedicated to Vegas, I think that's something that I always want to think about, is that question. And I don't know what the answer is, but that question of how do we experience global culture and local pride at the same time? And I think that doing things like this is such a wonderful way to just put it out there. You don't have to have the answer, but you do it. And that's great.
Keith, is there anything else you want to share with us about this concert?
No, it's just that we're really excited about it. We're still in the planning stages of it, so we're not exactly sure who's going to get involved, but it's going to be, every Composer Showcase is interesting and special, and it's just my favorite thing in the world. It's about the community. So
that's right. But I have to share with you something fun that I actually enjoy sort of watching happen. So your world with the Composer Showcase is lit like the day of. You're still putting together, like, okay, you sing this, and then like, maybe we'll do that next month, and like that happens like that afternoon of the
That's
And
right.
as you know, the symphony world and operas even was way worse than symphony. But like we have to like get everything in writing, and we have to have it done a year in advance, and we got to announce it on the season. Da, 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 da. So actually, it's been fun, sort of like having those worlds start kind of like mesh.
Yeah.
And out of that comes a concert.
I know, and it's wonderful. So yeah, so looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Keith. We're going to be talking in a few minutes, but
Okay.
we need to move on. So in January, I'm so excited about this concert. I'm excited about all the concerts, but this one is super cool because I'm getting to work with an artist who I've been wanting to work with for, I dare say it's close to 20 years now. And that is the pianist, Stuart Goodyear. Hi, Stuart. Is he there?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, Stuart.
Yeah.
And Stuart,
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
you're joining us. This is actually a truly international Facebook Live event. You're joining us from Toronto.
That's right.
And I love it. You're sort of willing wonderful weather to happen with your shirt.
This is Rhapsody in Blue right here.
Nice.
Both sense of the word.
So speaking of Gershwin, you're going to be joining us with another wonderful work for piano and orchestra by George Gershwin, his Concerto in F.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your relationship with both the Rhapsody in Blue and the Concerto in F, because they're such wonderful pieces.
They are. Well, I had this 2 LP set called the Gershwin album. And that was my introduction to the music of Gershwin. So An American in Paris was also on this.
Various pianists.
This compilation. And Philippe Entremont did both the Concerto in F and Rhapsody in Blue. And on the cover was this 1924 photo of Times Square, New York, with someone in a trench coat who was certainly not Gershwin, an actor playing Gershwin, and 2 ladies on either side of him, also definitely not from the 1924 period. I think they were wearing sweatshirts, but what have you. It was a very interesting cover, and I thought, all right, this intrigued me very much, and I put the LP on, and the first piece I heard was the thumping Charleston rhythm of Concerto in F. So that was my introduction to the music of Gershwin, and I thought, wow, I was just intrigued, excited, and just yearning to visit New York. And I was in New York for around 12 years, first 2 years studying, and then just making it my home after that. And every time I would explore all different areas of Manhattan or Brooklyn, I always had the sound of Gershwin in my head.
Well, we're going to be excited for you to visit Las Vegas and visit Las Vegas Philharmonic for the first time. I think there's the spirit of Gershwin is in that city. It's an entertainment city. It's a city that reminds me of what Tin Pan Alley must have been like in some ways. There's a lot of creativity that happens in Las Vegas, and so we're so happy that you're going to be joining us for this concert.
I always think about Las Vegas as a soundtrack of Tin Pan Alley with Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. and just to have been around those guys, I feel like we're going to be recreating that.
Most definitely. On this program, it is a completely an American music concert. We begin with this very rarely performed composer George Antile, and in George Antile, his story could be a totally separate Facebook Live cast because he had such an interesting history, and his music is of that time, really. And we begin it with this great overture called Hot Time Dance. And of course, we hear your Gershwin concerto. And then after intermission, we're going to perform Duke Ellington's Black, Brown, and Beige Suite, which is such a wonderful piece of music that he intended, actually in a much larger form, to be performed by symphony orchestra as well as his jazz band.
Yeah.
And we end it with Gershwin's American in Paris. So I think this concert sort of celebrates that that moment in time that the entire world still sort of looks to us with envy in a way, and loves this music that's really that identifies the American sort of way of life.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Looking
Stay
forward.
healthy.
Such a pleasure.
Do you have any stories from playing American in Paris or hearing Rhapsody in Blue when you were a kid? I sure do. It's one of those pieces.
I do, but I'm just right now I'm excited that United stopped using it as much, because for the longest time I heard the versions of it that were not, not the real thing. And so to be able to stop and then finally hear it with fresh ears and not the electric weird version. It's not the real thing, but it's such a great piece. Both of them actually really fantastic.
Really are.
Yeah.
All right, so now in February we sort of stick with this American theme, which it's like the personality of our orchestra.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, isn't it cool? It's fun.
So much American music. It's great.
So in February, late February 20th to be exact, we are doing, the title of the concert is Appalachian Spring and Grand Canyon Suites. Sort of tells you exactly what we're playing. But in between, we are playing another piece by Jennifer Higdon, her fantastic violin concerto. And to talk about the concerto and to talk about also, and Deanne will be coming back soon, this is sort of to really celebrate the partnership between the California Symphony and the Las Vegas Philharmonic. Jennifer Cho is the concertmaster of the California Symphony and will be joining us to perform Jennifer's violin concerto. Hi, Jenny.
Hi, guys. How are you?
How's it going?
Thanks for waiting backstage. So this piece, Jennifer's piece, we were talking about this last week. It's a very unique piece. It requires some things from the violinist that really aren't found in too many other pieces.
Yeah, I mean, the way that she kind of structured it and used certain intervals, there's a lot of use of sevenths and ninths and things like that. So it just lies in the hand a little bit differently than a piece that's based off more of thirds and sixths. And so that we talked about just kind of figuring out how to make new etudes and scale studies for practicing in those kinds of intervals on a string instrument. So it's been really interesting, and it's kept me creative, I think, in my practicing.
When you're learning a new piece, do you find that you need to create a different roadmap of how you learn it for every new piece you learn, that's designed specifically for the challenges of that particular piece?
A little bit. I mean, I think yes and no. I always try to look at it like there should be kind of a basic standard technique that you are able to apply to most things, of course, to start with. And then, as you say, each piece has its own issues, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so you do want to tailor it to that. And so I think that's what keeps it fresh, though, because if you just approached every single piece and every single practice the same way, then it would kind of get old.
And so talking about this partnership between Las Vegas Philharmonic and California Symphony, this is sort of also adds to what Josh is doing. He's coming in as an artist in residence, and he's bringing his experiences from where he's lived and where he's worked in the past, from where you've worked and lived in the past, Josh. And you're sharing these things with us in Las Vegas. Jenny, is there something unique about the fact that, Deanne will be coming up? It's something special for you that Deanne's coming up and playing the Florence Price concerto, and you're heading down to Las Vegas, sort of this exchange. What does that mean to you?
I think it's fantastic. I love that we're both going to be working with each other in that way and kind of sharing and communicating. And I think it's also really unique when different soloists come from different orchestras, because you bring kind of the attitudes of your orchestra and they work together, and it can create something really interesting. And I love that we're doing it with both the California Symphony and the Las Vegas Philharmonic, because I think both of us will really have a different experience each time that we do it, which not only for the audience, but for ourselves as artists, like really enables us to grow, because you get to experience the different facets of performing one concerto. And talking about what you're saying, like kind of the location of where you live and all of that, kind of flavoring the pieces that you work with. And I think that's so the case, like this concert, especially with the Appalachian Springs and the Grand Canyon Suite, and it having the Jennifer Higdon, and then my personal experience, like, I mean, I love that I get to play a piece by a Jennifer. You know, it's not something I honestly thought would ever happen when I was a kid, because you go to all these concerts and everyone's names sound really different from mine, right?
Yes.
And so just to get this opportunity to work with another Jennifer in this way, and then kind of have you know, when I'm listening to this music, because of what I do, my hobby is gardening, and what people even tease me and call farming. And so I have this kind of landscape in mind for myself when I'm playing this music, which I think maybe a little bit different from what other people bring to it. So it's just all been really, really great.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's we have to sort of move on, but I'm really happy that this concert came together in this way, because sandwiched between, well, a piece that we all know and love and have played quite a bit, but happily so, Appalachian Spring, with a piece that all of us may know or have played a movement of here and there over the course of time in Groffet's Grand Canyon Suite. It's a piece that older generations know very, very well. It was in the repertoire, standard repertoire. Every orchestra, including Toscanini's orchestra, he has a great recording of it, by the way. Everyone knew this piece when it came out and was in the repertoire for many, many years. So I'm so happy to be bringing that piece as well as Jennifer's piece alongside the Appalachian String. So we'll see you soon, Jenny.
All right.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, joining us again to talk about our next concert is Deanne Letourneau, our concertmaster. So, all right. Hi, Deanne.
Deanne.
So, all right. So the reason I wanted to have you, and I'm so happy that you could stick around to talk about this concert, is because in a way this is so Vegas, what Steve Hackman does, right? It's so Vegas. It's so appropriate. And this is one of many concerts he has put together. This happens to be the music of Beethoven versus the music of Coldplay, and he has quite a few others, Radiohead and Brahms. You know, it's really very interesting what he does. And the other thing too is he's a really good conductor. Like, there's nothing about, I mean, he's excellent. I just think he's an excellent conductor. But this, in a way, is something that sort of fits our personality, right, Deanne?
Absolutely, 100%. You know, Las Vegas is known. We have great classical music, but we also have the great pop music. And actually, I've met Coldplay several times behind stages at AMAs and wherever else, at Billboard Awards and things like that. So it's kind of fun, kind of playing their mashup music, kind of with Beethoven. I don't know, it's interesting. I'm really excited. But Vegas, where everything happens here. Broadway happens, rock concerts happen. Now we've got big stages where we've got huge. I mean, I was with Celine for 9 years, so you can't really get much bigger than that as far as a show. So this is a really cool way that the Las Vegas Philharmonic is bringing in kind of that show world, and most of our players in the orchestra play these shows. I mean, you know, in fact, I would imagine that without being a direct quote, I would say that especially in our brass and a lot of our strings, we've probably played with Coldplay somewhere.
You're probably right. You never know.
Maybe they'll start singing. We will not ask the trumpets to start singing because I know that they will. So,
Josh, have you ever done any of Steve's shows or have known about this concept?
No, I've never done them or seen them. I know about the concept, and I think that it's super cool when you see an orchestra, especially in this case, like you're saying, you play these other things. You don't just play in the Las Vegas Philharmonic playing classical music. And I think along with the local exploration that we were talking about earlier, like diving into what it means to be a part of a tradition, to play classical music, I think you have to also ask, who are the musicians and what else do they do? And you can find these parallels throughout history of the other music that Brahms played and that influenced his music, that Mozart, that everybody back then. And so how is that happening now? Well, this is how it's happening. It's musicians who are making a living, doing things that they love, playing music, and it's not always one kind of music. And so to be able to express that, I think that's extremely, if you really think about it, it fits with our tradition very well to have this kind of mashup and expression of a fuller musical life.
Well said. Well said.
Absolutely.
Well, we need to move on. I'm way behind schedule. That's typical. So, that's just the way it is. But in the same month,
I have to be over here.
In the same month, a few weeks later, March 20th, we do yet another type of music, cabaret music, that is just so Las Vegas, but in the context of working with the great orchestra and working with one of the great cabaret artists of the world. And to help me talk about the unique, incredible Meow Meow, we'll welcome back Keith. Hi, Keith.
Hi, how y'all doing? Meow Meow, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, good. Yeah, but she's something else. If you've never seen anything that Meow Meow does, there's an artist named Pink Martini who plays a lot of her stuff on the Pink Martini station on Pandora and Spotify and things like that. It's kind of like cool bachelor music. But with that said, Meow Meow is really funny. She's something else, and she is a great cabaret artist. And now she's going to come and do her cabaret on the big stage with the Philharmonic.
Well,
fantastic.
Keith, what I remember the last time I went to see the Composer Showcase, you had this over the top singer. She kind of sauntered on stage a little late with her backup singers, and she just owned that stage in a way that only that type of performer can. Just sort of, they're like they're not born every day. They're just sort of the mold is thrown away, and Meow like that, and you work with people like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, she is really interesting because she harkens back to the days of like Shirley Bassey. She's like just way too fabulous for her own good. You know what I mean? And so that said, it's like she'll be a show unto herself. Anything time somebody's like that on the smaller stage, it's much more intimate, and you really get to know them. So it's going to be not a challenge, but it'll be really cool to see how that translates into that big Reynolds Hall, because Reynolds Hall is. It's difficult. I've been on the stage, obviously, with you guys and other times too. You don't get the same thing back. Right. You know what I mean? Because you just have to stand there and pretend. Like, yes, I can see you, but I can't see you. I can't see anybody. So it's really, it's interesting though. But I think that Meow Meow is big enough and exciting enough that she's gonna just fill the space with that personality.
I've seen this video of this show that will come to Las Vegas, and she's done it in London as well as in Australia. And she is so smart because she has conquered exactly what is not available to a cabaret artist by entering from the audience. She'll leave and enter from the audience. She goes out into the audience. Everyone is always looking to see where she is. And it's brilliant what she does because she knew exactly the challenge that a cabaret artist has in a large space. Yep. So it's going to be, we're in for a treat. I know it. And so excited, and also Josh talking about, it's the same thing when you're playing chamber music versus or a solo recital, as opposed to playing a concerto like the Dvorak concerto with orchestra. It's a sort of the same challenge, right?
Absolutely. I definitely, when I go out for a concerto, I'm thinking big and I'm projecting because you want to make sure the person in the last seat of the hall hears everything and has a great experience. But if I'm playing chamber music for the rooms it was written for, people might just be maximum 30 or 40 feet away. And It's very different. I think it's wonderful as an artist to be able to have those different kinds of experiences, because you can take what you learn here and apply it there in different ways.
Absolutely. Thank you, Keith, for joining us again. You're off the hook.
Thank you, Keith. Yeah.
All right. We reach our season finale with some really unique music, some music we all know very well, of course, and to help us sort of end the show and to talk about the specifically the Ravel and the Berlioz Symphonie Fantastique, we bring on our principal clarinetist, Corey Tiffin. Hey, Corey.
Hey, guys.
Hey,
and
welcome.
we're going to also, well, we'll bring back Deanna a little bit later, but I wanted to get the perspective of a non-string player, in our orchestra, because with music like Ravel, with the Berlioz, he really challenges you in a unique way that matches the many notes that violinists always get, right? The strings always have the thousands of notes, but in the Berlioz, you guys get a lot of notes too.
We do. Sometimes it's like that. That's definitely it's definitely one of those pieces. I'm really looking forward to playing it because anytime I've ever been asked to play it, it's never worked out with my schedule. And of course, there are clarinet excerpts in the first and second part too, so it's something that you learn regardless of whether you've performed it before. I'm especially looking forward to that lyrical solo in the third movement. It's just so wonderful.
Oh, well, it's wonderful to think that this piece was written only a few years after Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. As crazy as this piece was, it is in the same decade as the Ninth Symphony. Doesn't that blow your minds?
What year was it written?
1830.
1830.
Wow.
1830. Yeah, I didn't put that together. I mean, he had some other inspirations, maybe, that Beethoven didn't.
Well, you could certainly say he did.
But it's also he learned a lot of what he learned was from sitting back in the timpani, playing the timpani with was it the Paris Opera?
Mm-hmm.
And so his perspective back there and just hitting things with different parts, seeing what people did when they were messing around in between rehearsal moments. It's such a different perspective than other composers whose names are that big. And I think a lot of it comes from that. It's super cool.
And the other thing too was that he was one of the first composers who wasn't also sort of a virtuoso performer on one instrument, on a piano or violin. He really always thought as a composer would think, what can I do if I were a clarinetist? How would I play, how would I challenge, what challenging sounds can I create? And I think that actually that freed his mind in a way that perhaps other composers before him just didn't do.
Right. I think it's interesting, the parallel, you mentioned Beethoven 9. So think about, like, Beethoven 9 is this big grand finale that's extremely famous, and everyone's duly employed, and it's this glorious sound with all the singers and everything. It's a couple hundred people at least. And in the last movement of the Berlioz, everyone is employed, but it's to a much different end, right? So it's not about creating this most joyous sound where everything's blending together. It's sort of about everyone having this big party simultaneously and finding, like, the extremities of their instruments as the composer would imagine in 1830. So, like, you've got violins going, and then you've got the clarinets and all the other woodwinds, like as if playing the melody's not enough. We're like on every single note we're trilling, and it's just this kind of a glorious cacophony, really.
That glorious cacophony indeed. Josh, you were going to say something?
I think that's such a wonderful description of it. It's glorious cacophony. I was just going to reinforce what you were saying. As a composer performer, which is what every composer was until the 20th century, I identify with what you were saying. When I start writing a piece, the first thing I do is put the cello away and walk over to the piano, because I'm not great at the piano. And I can hear things in a different way, but it forces me to maybe think more like Berlioz in a way than to think like a cellist, to have those sounds not just coming from what's familiar and idiomatic, but really coming from imagination. So you may be onto something with that. And it's Berlioz's place in history is maybe partially assured because of his unique approach more than anything.
I'm really proud of the fact, though, that this concert begins with a composer who, if it were not for the fact that she was probably a couple of generations too young, she was born too early, I should say, and that she didn't also pass away at such a young age. Lily Boulanger, the sister of Nadia Boulanger, has some fantastic, very few pieces, but some fantastic pieces for orchestra. And we begin this concert with one of her works that the Las Vegas Philharmonic has never performed any works of hers before. And it sort of bookends this season of celebrating so many things, but of course the fact that we have a season that is really dominated by music by women composers and music by living composers, and also music by American composers. So I think that having Lily Boulanger's Spring Morning, From a Spring Morning, beginning this concert is part of our statement, of our mission to bring this sort of music to our audience. And of course, the Ravel. The last time the Las Vegas Philharmonic performed a concerto by Ravel, we performed his first concerto in G major with Martina Filiak, a fantastic soloist. But the second concerto he wrote, very interesting story. It was written for a pianist who lost his right arm in World War I, Ludwig Wittgenstein. He was luckily from one of the wealthiest families in the world. His father was the Andrew Carnegie of Europe. He was the steel magnate of Europe, the Wittgenstein father. And Ludwig, the son, was able to commission practically every famous composer of the 20th century, including Ravel, but there's also a piece by Benjamin Britten. There's the list just goes on. Richard Strauss wrote, I think, 3 pieces for him and an orchestra. But this piano concerto for the left hand is such a powerful work and so interesting to see performed. And it's going to be performed by our annual American-German exchange fellowship, Till Hoffmann, who will be joining us. He lives in Berlin, fantastic young artist. So that's our season. I mean, what do you guys think?
It's great. I love it.
Sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it's such an honor to be a part of it. I think you've really, like you were saying, you've really covered quite a spread of different music coming from different places and people and times. And it's a beautiful statement, in my opinion, for the true creative tradition of classical music, not just the canon of pieces that we think of as greatest hits. That's a pretty narrow definition, but the living creativity of what's happening, where am I, how do I respond musically, and how did we get here? And maybe even where are we going?
Yeah. Let's bring on Deanne for this conversation to sort of end this conversation, maybe take some questions from people watching. Hey, Corey, what do you have? That was Deanne. Sure,
it was. I think we're trying to deal with the click issue. Yeah.
Corey, what are your thoughts on the season?
On the season, I'm very glad to see all the Beethoven symphonies, because I think that means I'm going to play all of them. Will have played all of them finally. So that's just on a personal note. Other than that, I love how much American music there is, and I love how many. This is a continuation of what you've been doing since you've been here, Donato. But I love that there are a lot of female composers represented on the season as well.
Thank you. Hey, Deanne, are you? How's it going? I'm hearing stuff. All right.
I'm getting some feedback or something, so it's kind of.
Yeah. Does everyone have headphones to use? It might help.
Yeah, I do. I have headphones. I did.
Well, I've
It's
had-
not always the issue, but sometimes the ways that echoes get processed end up being kind of could be something like that. I'm not sure. No.
That might be better.
Well, now we've lost Donato.
I can't hear.
Yeah.
We lost Donato.
So while Donato's coming back, yes, the season full of music by women and American composers. Deanne, what are your thoughts on that?
I just think this is a fantastic season. I'm really excited, especially I think that, as we're bringing into the American side of this season, especially as poignant because of what's going on right now. I really feel like we need to celebrate where we are, and the United States, we're America, we're all together in this. And I really think that although I won't give us a whole bunch of credit saying we predicted this, but I will say that having this music and celebrating our community, our nation, I think that it's fantastic, and especially getting a lot of the women composers in there that don't usually get that kind of limelight. It's really, really exciting.
Nice. It's true. Donato, we've got you back again, right? Oh nope, we lost Donato for sure. Yeah, so I'll jump in there too. We've got quite a bit of feedback coming from something in Deanne's. It's actually Deanne's setup, not Donato's. I'm not sure why that is. It's kind of crazy. I think just on a kind of personal note, I'm not sure if you can hear still.
I hear you very well.
Okay, good. On a kind of personal note, right now, yes, looking for things that we can build on that are positive movements. Maybe we can take turns actually muting when we're not talking. Are you able to mute yourself, Deanne? Can you mute yourself?
Looking. I don't see.
Corey, where is the mute?
It's the bottom
left. Okay, there we go. That's great. Okay, yes. So on a personal note, right now, anything that feels like something we can build on and is important, because it's very easy when things aren't going well, whether I feel involved or not. And there are certainly things that are out of our control, but it's easy to kind of get down about all of that. But that's not the whole story. Even when things aren't going super well, there are always opportunities to recognize what is there, to use it, to build on it. And this was all already happening when the current situation came to us. And I think it's such a beautiful season, a beautiful direction to be going, and really exemplifies many of the things that I want to be thinking about as a person, as an artist. Like, what does it mean to be a global citizen and a member of a local community? What does it mean to be a classical performer and composer? What does that tradition look like if you put it into today's context? How does it get expressed and how does it continue? These things, right now, we're forced to look at them because we're unable to connect in the way that we were connecting most prevalently. But I love that question was already on your mind, Donato, and that you really put it out there, and that our work together so far has really been about that. And I think it's time to double down on the big questions of where should we be going? We're not just going back to how things were. Let's make it better. And how do we do that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Joshua. In a way, this forced lemonade making that we're now in is going to help us be that much better at spreading the word, spreading the music that we so love, that we have always known that if we could just get someone to that concert, whether the concert is in a concert hall or chamber music hall, high school gym, parking lot, if they can just have a direct, non-fussy experience with our music, there's no question that they can become in love and obsessed with it in the way we are.
it's very powerful music, but I think you're also tackling the question of whose music is it?
That's right.
And that's even more than our music and where it's played, which are certainly have been issues for classical music that we've been talking about, that people have been addressing. There are more efforts now, not right now, but in the last few years, to take music and have it performed in more places than just the concert hall. We're not trying to replace the concert hall. Great music should be everywhere. It should be everywhere, and everyone should be able to interact with it. And I think that, yes, that's part of it, but also who is that music coming from? Who is it for? These are questions that we have to really think about. And right now, there's nothing else to think about because we can't do what we were doing. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this and have the structure around that conversation in place so that it's not just a void that we're trying to build in, but it's really something that we can grow.
Well, I want to thank all of you. Were there any other questions that we missed that we wanted to ask from our comments? I don't think so. If not, I promise to answer anything that we can later. Listen, I want to thank all of Joshua. Thank you so much for sticking through this, regardless of the technical difficulties. We hope this is just going to happen. You know,
this is 2020. Yes,
we're not ESPN yet. Okay, getting there.
Is everyone wearing pants? I think is the question. Everyone's like,
yeah, we might as well just go there.
Yeah.
Corey, thanks so much for joining us as well and giving us your perspective. And it's always, I think, so beneficial for our audience to get a sense of what everyone is experiencing throughout the orchestra, because it's different from wherever you're sitting and from what you need to do in the orchestra. And Deanne, thank you. Bye.
Thank you. See you in
Vegas. Thank you, everybody.
Looking forward to
stay safe, stay
also.
healthy.